In 1967, the federal minimum wage in the United States was $1.40 an hour. Shahid Khan made $1.20. He stood at an industrial sink in a university cafeteria in Champaign, Illinois, arms deep in gray water, scrubbing plates for students who would walk across a stage in 4 years and collect degrees and salaries and futures. He was 16 years old. He had flown from Lahore, Pakistan, to a country where almost no one looked like him, where the entire Pakistani-born population numbered in the low thousands, where no diaspora waited with a spare room and a familiar meal. He carried a suitcase and $500. That was the whole of it. And here is what you need to know before we go any further. That 16-year-old, the one pulling wet trays from a steam rack for 20 cents less than the legal minimum, he is today worth approximately $12 billion. He owns an NFL franchise, a London football club, and the largest privately held auto parts manufacturer in North America. The entire fortune traces to a single observation about truck bumpers, not software, not cryptocurrency, not a smartphone app. Truck bumpers. The physical, graspable, you-can-knock-on-it body of the American automobile. By the end of this, you will understand how that happened, and more importantly, why it almost didn't. Lahore in the early 1960s was a city still living inside the architecture of the British Raj. Wide colonial boulevards, Mughal gardens, a postal system that worked, and a school system where English was the medium of instruction in many institutions. Khan's family was middle class. His father worked in construction. The household was not destitute, and the boy who left it was not fleeing poverty in the way viral content sometimes implies. He was chasing something. He had watched American westerns on television. He had read about American engineering. He had the education and the ambition. And in 1967, the year the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 finally opened the door to non-European arrivals, he walked through it. He took a bus from O'Hare Airport to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He arrived on a cold night. His first bed cost $2, a room at the University YMCA. The campus was flat, brick, and enormous. A Big Ten research university spread across the Illinois prairie. Sodium vapor streetlights casting amber pools on empty sidewalks. No one was waiting for him. He enrolled in industrial engineering. And to eat, to pay rent, to exist in America, he washed dishes. Let's be honest about what that means. Not the inspirational poster version, the real version. A commercial kitchen in the late 1960s. Fluorescent tubes humming above stainless steel sinks. Stacks of institutional ceramic plates tall enough to block your sightline. A floor-mounted dishwashing machine belching steam. The smell of institutional gravy and chlorine sanitizer. Your hands crack from the hot water and the detergent. You do this for hours. You are invisible. The students whose plates you scrub do not know your name. Do not wonder where you are from. Do not imagine that you will outlast every one of them in the American story. You are the background labor of someone else's college experience. Khan did this for 4 years. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from UIUC in 1971. Now comes the decade nobody talks about. The viral version of this story compresses the timeline. Dishwasher to billionaire, rags to riches, the cafeteria to the owner's box. But between the sink and the fortune, there were 7 years of engineering work. Unglamorous, undramatic, absolutely essential. Khan took a job at a small auto parts manufacturer called Flex and Gate Corporation, right there in Urbana. The company made one-piece flexible bumpers for pickup trucks and SUVs. It was owned by a man named Charles Gleason Butzo. It was not a large operation. It was not prestigious. It was a factory. Kahn learned every machine, every stamping press, every mold, every paint line. He learned the customers. He learned the margins. He learned where the industry was going. And here is where the story turns on a single technical observation. In the early 1970s, the big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, still bolted chrome-plated steel bumpers onto their cars and trucks. Chrome bumpers were heavy. They were expensive. They required a separate chrome plating process that used hexavalent chromium baths. Yellowish, toxic, regulated even then. A nightmare of industrial chemistry. They corroded. They dented. And after 1972, they had a new problem. That year, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration introduced Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard number 215. It required bumpers to withstand 5-mile-per-hour impacts without damage to the vehicle's safety systems. Chrome bumpers crumpled on contact. Flexible polymer bumpers absorbed the impact and returned to shape. The regulation did not say, "Stop using chrome." It didn't have to. The physics said it. Kahn saw this. He saw it clearly and completely. The entire American automotive fleet, every car, every truck, every SUV rolling off every assembly line in Detroit, was going to transition from chrome to flexible polymer bumpers. It was not a question of taste or fashion. It was a regulatory inevitability. A safety bureaucrat in Washington had written a bumper standard, and a Pakistani engineer in Illinois read it as a business plan. Everyone around him could see the same data. His employer could see it. The engineers at GM and Ford could see it. The difference was that Kahn acted. In 1978, when Butzo was looking to sell or restructure, Kahn purchased Flex Engate. He financed the acquisition partly through a Small Business Administration loan, the federal government's program for exactly this kind of bet. The exact purchase price is hard to pin down because it was a private transaction. Some sources say as low as $50,000, others cite $500,000, including operating capital and the SBA financing. What matters is the scale. This was not a leveraged buyout by a Wall Street firm. This was a first-generation immigrant engineer borrowing money from a government program to buy a small factory in central Illinois. The American government loaned a man who had been washing dishes a decade earlier the capital to buy a failing bumper business. That business is now estimated to generate between $7 and $9 billion in annual revenue. The SBA may never see a better return on investment. Kahn's strategic insight after the acquisition was not just about making bumpers. It was about how he sold them. Rather than competing as one of many commodity suppliers bidding on price, he invested in engineering capability to offer complete bumper systems: design, tooling, manufacturing, painting, delivery, as an integrated package. He did not want to be one vendor in a lineup. He wanted to be the only call the automaker needed to make. This led to the contract that changed everything. Flex Engate won a sole-source agreement to supply bumpers for the Ford F-150 pickup truck. You need to understand what that means. The F-150 is the best-selling vehicle in the United States. It has held that title for over 40 years. Ford sells roughly 800,000 of them every year. Every single one carries a Flex Engate bumper. If you have ever stood in a parking lot anywhere in America, you have looked at a product made by the company the dishwasher bought. That is not a metaphor. That is a supply chain fact. The company expanded. 60-plus manufacturing plants across the United States, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Spain, China. The product line diversified beyond bumpers into exterior lighting, running boards, roof racks, trailer hitches. By the 2020s, Flex Engate was one of the largest privately held auto parts suppliers in North America. Khan still controlled it. He never took it public. The fortune stayed in his hands. But the factory floor that built that fortune also became the site of something less triumphal. And this is part of the story too. In 2012 and 2013, workers at a Flex N-Gate plant in Chicago organized with the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America. The workforce was predominantly African American and Latino. They cited low wages, unsafe conditions, and retaliatory management practices. The National Labor Relations Board documented the case. OSHA records show multiple citations at various Flex N-Gate facilities over the years. A worker quoted in the Chicago Tribune described the gap between the company's profitability and the wages on the floor. The distance between the owner's box and the assembly line measured not in feet, but in zeros. The man who had once been paid below minimum wage now ran a company where workers argued their own wages were insufficient. You can hold that contradiction without resolving it. The documentary tradition demands that you do. In December 2011, Khan agreed to purchase the Jacksonville Jaguars from Wayne Weaver for approximately $770 million. NFL owners approved the sale. The transaction closed in January 2012. Here is the fact that should stop you. For 92 years, from the league's founding in 1920 through 2011, every single NFL franchise had been owned by a white American. Khan became the first member of an ethnic minority to own an NFL team. Not in the civil rights era, not in the 1980s, not in the 1990s. In 2012, the league that sells itself as America's game took nearly a century to allow someone who looked like Khan into the owner's room. He didn't break that barrier with protest or activism. He broke it with a checkbook funded by truck bumpers. The Jaguars have not been a dynasty under Khan's ownership. Jacksonville has made the playoffs only a handful of times. There have been persistent questions, denied by Khan but fueled by the team's regular games at Wembley Stadium in London, about whether the franchise might relocate. The civic relationship between Khan and Jacksonville has been real but complicated, marked by stadium renovation investments and development proposals alongside on-field mediocrity. In 2013, Khan extended his reach across the Atlantic, purchasing Fulham Football Club in London. Fulham plays at Craven Cottage, a small, charming ground on the banks of the Thames, capacity roughly 25,000, with an actual Victorian-era cottage built into one corner of the stadium. The club was relegated from the Premier League in 2014, spent seasons in the lower division, and eventually returned. It is not a glamour purchase. It is a foothold in world football by a man whose relationship with sports is fundamentally about ownership, not fandom. His son, Tony Khan, co-owns both the Jaguars and Fulham and founded All Elite Wrestling in 2019. The family's portfolio now spans American football, English football, and professional wrestling. 3 different nations' entertainments run from the same fortune. And the fortune itself? Forbes estimates it at approximately $12 billion as of recent valuations. The Jaguars alone, purchased for $770 million, are now valued at somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. That is roughly a 5-fold return in 12 years on a single asset. But the bulk of the wealth remains in Flex N-Gate, the private company, the stamping presses, the polymer molds, the bumpers on every F-150 in every driveway in the country. There is a version of this story that is pure inspiration. The dishwasher who became a billionaire. The immigrant who proved the American dream. And that version is not wrong. Khan himself has embraced it, has told it from stages and podiums, has made it the centerpiece of his public identity. But the fuller version is more interesting. A boy from Lahore arrived with functional but limited English, not the no English of viral posts. He had been admitted to an American engineering program, which required he could read and write in the language. He arrived with $500, not nothing, about $4,500 in today's money, modest but not destitute. He did not invent the flexible bumper. It existed before him. What he did was recognize a regulatory inevitability, position himself inside a company that could serve it, wait 7 years until the opportunity to buy that company emerged, use a government loan program designed for exactly such a moment, and then execute with an engineer's discipline for decades. He was not a genius who descended from the sky. He was a trained engineer who paid attention when others didn't, who acted when others hesitated, and who built systems when others chased shortcuts. The decade of invisible work, the 7 years on the factory floor between the dish rack and the SBA loan, is the part of the story that actually explains the outcome. It is also the part that gets cut from the headline. In 2014, Khan returned to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Same campus, same brick buildings, same flat Illinois sky. He was not carrying a suitcase this time. He was wearing a tailored suit and standing behind a podium at commencement, facing 10,000 graduates and their families. The cafeteria where he had scrubbed plates was a short walk from where he stood. He told them that no work is beneath anyone, that every hour he had spent at that sink was an hour learning about America, its rhythms, its expectations, its quiet contract that if you show up and pay attention, a door might open that was closed to your father. He was the proof, and also the complication. Because the door that opened for him did not open for the workers on his factory floors who filed federal complaints about their conditions. Because the game he bought into, the NFL, kept its ownership ranks white for 92 years before letting him in. Because the SBA loan program that seeded his fortune is the same kind of government intervention that bootstrap narratives pretend doesn't exist. The next time you see a Ford F-150 in a parking lot, on a highway, in your neighbor's driveway, look at the bumper. It is a single piece of injection-molded polymer, painted to match the body, light enough to lift with one hand. It replaced a heavy chrome assembly that dented on impact and leaked toxic chromium into the groundwater of every town with a plating shop. A government regulation mandated the change. An immigrant engineer recognized the opportunity. An SBA loan funded the bet. That bumper is a $12 billion idea. And the man who built the company that makes it once earned $1.20 an hour, 20 cents below the legal minimum, washing dishes that were not his own.